Tomiko, head of one of the most prominent financial conglomerates in Japan, was on her deathbed. She had to choose an heir from among her 3 daughters. The eldest daughter, a brilliant businesswoman who, despite her young age, managed dozens of companies, Shizuka. Green corsage. The second daughter, a genius scholar with numerous patents and doctorates to her name, Reika. And then, the youngest daughter, who, was an immature girl with no special talents, Erika. My dears, I am not long for this world. I want you to give it your all for the next 3 months and increase your reputations in your fields. The heir to my fortune will be the most talented one among you. This seems a bit fairy tale-like, what with the nice underdog girl and her 2 haughty sisters. They suffer a rather horrific fate later on, too. There are also yokai, a ghost, a mentor who makes you solve a riddle, and other fairy tale-like qualities. I'm not talented like my sisters. The only thing I'm good at is singing. This woman telling Erika to become a super idol is Miho, her nanny. Her words set the direction of the rest of Erika's life. Yeah, kind of Famicom music video. You might be wondering about the strange space theme going on here, but there's a reason for it. So far, this seems like the setup for a sitcom or a comedy, a lot of wacky hijinks at any rate, and it definitely is. But you might be surprised to learn that by the ending, Erika will be aiming a pistol at her own grandfather before lowering the barrel, knowing, as he has sneeringly told her, that she doesn't have it in herself to murder him. Idol Hakenden is a wacky Famicom adventure game about becoming a super idol, making friends, and saving the world from the evil Lord Iramono, whom this translation, courtesy of the Lipemco fan translation group, calls the Kooky King. It came out in 1989, developed by Natsume, and published by Toachiki. I think there are 3 separate companies called Natsume: Natsume Atari, Natsume Inc. USA, and Natsume Inc. Japan. The latter 2 are different branches of the same company, most famous for Harvest Moon. Meanwhile, Natsume Atari is the company that made Idol Hakenden, and later the Pokemon clone Medarot series, though nowadays they mostly do licensed work and, like a lot of these companies, gambling machines. Not looking too hot. Idol Hakenden is a Japanese adventure game that, no surprise, is modeled off the template of Portopia Renzoku Satsujin Jiken. The graphics are displayed in one box, the text in another, and the menu of options in another. In terms of format and presentation, the only innovation compared to Portopia are the character portraits that appear in the upper right. Some of them have multiple expressions. Amazing! In comparison to Princess Tomato or Metal Slater Glory, Idol Hakenden is as short as Erika. I mean, I assume she's short. Maybe she's not. She seems short to me. With only 5 levels, or as they're called here, acts. Natsume beat Nakayuji to the punch. Idol Hakenden suffers similar shortcomings to most Japanese adventure games. One of these is that only a single and frequently illogical sequence of options will bring Erika to the end of each act, so the first-time player will likely end up selecting every choice from the menu until something finally gets the story moving again, even though there doesn't seem to be any logical reason that you couldn't just go to the option that ends up moving the story forward. This becomes particularly frustrating as the story escalates towards the finale, when endlessly choosing random menu options sucks the tension out of otherwise dramatic or interesting moments. Like here, at this point, Ben Benson, the tiger-suited man trying to kill Erika, is a former Canadian Olympic athlete who, as a result of Pavlovian conditioning, instantly sprints when he hears a gunshot. Erika has a pistol but isn't willing to shoot him, so of course she has to fire the pistol into the air and hop out of the way of the sprinting Ben Benson, sending him plummeting off the cliff. But you can't just tell Erika to use the gun. Whenever you do, Erika just says, "No, I can't," Even after you find out Ben Benson's weakness, Erica still refuses. So then I spend a few minutes selecting every single possible menu option, even though I've already exhausted all of them anyway, and at the end, Erica finally fires the pistol into the air and sends Ben Benson plummeting to his death. But Erica isn't a killer, so she tells herself Ben Benson is fine. Like extreme difficulty in other genres, I assume this was a lousy trick to pad the length of the adventure. Either that or I somehow make the same error in every single one of these I play. And like many adventure games on both sides of the pond, both sides of both ponds, Idle Hakenden's puzzles aren't exactly great. In Act 1, for example, Erica needs to crack open a nut to get a fortune slip from inside. Instead of going to a shop and buying a nutcracker, Erica must enter the aquarium, sing to a sea otter in the tank to tell it to crack the nut, then go back to a previous area, steal a marble ashtray, which of course you can't take before this. Well, I guess that kind of makes sense since, unlike a protagonist of a Western-style adventure game, Erica isn't a kleptomaniac. And then give the ashtray to the otter through the glass tank somehow, and after the otter breaks the nut with the ashtray, you have to dance for a diver who appears inside the tank to grab her attention, and then when she says that getting the fortune slip isn't her job, offer her a piece of candy in exchange. Okay then. Why do adventure game puzzles always end up like this? My guess is that most developers just make up random nonsense as they go along. Though this might be the worst puzzle in all of Idle Hakenden. Well, that's how Idle Hakenden is the same as other adventure games. So what sets it apart? As you will have noticed, it has a cute, expressive, cartoony style. The credits list the character designer as Kondo Zayamon no Suke Utakamaru. Moby Games identifies this person as Kondo Yutaka. If this guy here is the same Kondo Yutaka, he has since become the illustrator for Kuso Kagaku Dokuhon, a series of books that apparently explore the unrealistic science in anime and manga to humorous effect. Judging from his Twitter, and I'm more confident that this is the Twitter of the right Kondo Yutaka, he likes that Turning Red movie people have been abuzz about. It's odd, though, that characters' mouths continue to move as though they're talking when the text is omniscient narration. Idle Hakenden is totally weird. It's also at times shockingly dark. For example, in the finale of the first act, Erica must convince a suicide bomber not to blow up the Cyber Gong Show. Why would you want to die here? I've always lived in obscurity. I want to at least go out with a bang. The original scenario, by the way, was written by someone named Ando Naohiko. It's unclear to me what else this person has done. In addition to the usual commands, look, use, and so on, there are also two unusual menu commands, Erica and Friends. Erica lets you choose from Erica's super idle abilities. Sing, dance, smile, and act dumb. Personally, I can do those last two fine, and I'm not even a regular idol, much less a super one. Then again, neither is Erica for most of Idle Hakenden. Erica's special abilities are essential to get out of many predicaments. For example, to defuse the suicide bomber situation, pun intended, Erica must sing to him. I imagine singing these lyrics in tune to the music would be a karaoke challenge. Karaoke challenge. The music of this music-centric video game was written by Kyohei Sada, who also gets a producer credit. According to Moby Games, Kyohei Sada is an alias of Kiyohiro Sada, who wrote soundtracks for, among other things, Russian Attack, Summon Night Swordcraft Story, and Stinger. In 1993, Sada founded the company Pure Sound, which worked on the audio in many more video games, including Nights in the Nightmare and Half Minute Hero. The other composer, Misato Tomo, isn't credited with anything but Idle Hakenden, as far as I know. Unfortunately, thoughts about dessert aren't enough to stop this guy from blowing himself up. Only Erica's dopey smile is enough to melt his heart and save the theater. Friends functions a bit like the sidekick character typical in Portopia clones. Think asking Percy for his observations in Princess Tomato. Except here, there are eventually 7 sidekicks. The title Idol Hakenden is an allusion to Nanso Satomi Hakenden, a 106-volume 19th century novel written by Kyokte Bakken. Surprisingly for a Japanese novel, the first part of the first English translation was published only in 2021 as 8 Dogs or Hakenden Part 1, an ill-considered jest. That's right, Idol Hakenden was available in English before the classic novel it jokingly references. Incidentally, SNK also adapted Nanso Satomi Hakenden into a Famicom RPG, Satomi Hakenden. At the opening of Act 1, Miho introduces us to Master Ichiro Shinjitsu, a veritable walking encyclopedia of the world of show business and an expert on the idol scene. He bears a certain resemblance to Dracula. I'm not sure what that thing is on his forehead. Does he have a third eye? Ichiro tells Erika she'll be the greatest idol in history. But for your true talent to bloom, you must first gather 7 comrades. The Friends option lets the player select from each of the other idols currently in the group. There isn't a progression where the player ends up having more options one by one, but rather different members staying behind or coming along depending on the story. Each friend has a distinct wacky speech pattern, and each has a different skill set to help with different situations. For example, Hoshimi starts every sentence with, "If I may speak freely," and Murasaki, the girl who loves gunpowder and carries explosives with her, as one does, makes herself useful by throwing a bomb to clear a mob of goons. But most of the time, unless they're scripted to have a role, each of the other girls will recite a stock line about not knowing what to do. Nanso Satomi Hakenden is the tale of 8 young men bound by fate to come together to serve the Satomi clan. Idol Hakenden is the tale of 8 young women bound by fate to come together to sing pop songs, which I suppose is the present-day equivalent. For the first 3 acts, Erika's primary goal is to find the 7 other idols for her band, which they eventually christen the Erika Project. At the start of Act 1, Erika quickly meets the second idol, Hoshimi, a clairvoyant and Ichiro's granddaughter. I like her cute hairstyle, though her overall get-up's a bit odd. Hoshimi is the most frequently helpful. With her powers, she can dispense hints on what to do next. Except when she can't. The second to join is Yayoi, a 17-year-old Wolf of Wall Street-like stock trading genius. Her motive for joining the group is to make lots of money. I'll say this much, we could probably buy a small country or 2. Yikes! This girl's a real deal! Do we even need that inheritance anymore? I think the writer forgot what the initial conflict was. Third on board is Misao, whom we find participating in a hacking tournament. Look at all those scary cyberpunks. The one in the back appears to be wearing an 18th century powdered wig. See that guy on the computer on the left? Well, that isn't a guy. That's Misao, a badass computer type who happens to dress and look so masculine that I mistook her for a boy. Whether this is some kind of queer representation, I leave for others to ponder. Though checking the character artwork, Misao does appear to at least have longer hair than her sprite suggests. But not a single character's in-game appearance matches up with the artwork, so make of that what you will. Why is Hoshimi wearing a crown? And I only know which one is Midori by process of elimination. If there's anything I can do, you've heard, just ask away. Lepemko uses a bunch of wacky phonetic spellings to, I assume, convey different Japanese regional accents. Because Erika distracts Misao's opponent by cramming a manju in his mouth, allowing her to beat him, Misao agrees to join. Next is Yachio Chibitake, a buff, even more masculine woman, and the producer of the Cyber Gong show that you spend Act 1 trying to get into. Between the shoulder pads and mullet, Yachio is quite an 80s woman. I love that she is so non-feminine, and yet treated with complete respect. She's never the butt of any jokes for how she looks, which is a low bar, but a lot of pop culture couldn't clear it back then. Yachio, impressed with Erika's literally life-saving talent, agrees to join the band as advisor. I assume this means producer. Yachio then triggers the main conflict of Act 2, Miracle Voice. You should focus on improving your skill as a singer. I think you should go see the Queen of Enka, Kurumi Miyako, who retired from the scene 5 years ago, and ask to be her pupil. Problem is, no one knows where to find her now. For the unfamiliar, enka is a kind of sentimental old-fashioned music, a bit outside the J-pop I'd assume Erika's going for. So Erika starts accosting random strangers in the street. "Excuse me, is it true that the former singer Kurumi Miyako lives nearby? Why are you wasting your time with that? Don't you know the great King of Terror will descend upon us in 1999? This also brings us to the attention of a creepy redhead who tries to force Erika on a date. Your dad's a big shot in Kansai's Yakuza, right, Misao? Right? Get lost before I have you sleep with the fishes, pal! The same scene features both a doomsday conspiracy theorist and a creepy guy who won't take no for an answer. Perhaps Idol Hikenden can be surprisingly real. Yep, that's one heck of a brawl. It sure is. To get past a Nurikabe, we have to play with this kid named Mika. The other characters here don't matter whatsoever, which is probably why Mika's design stands out. With that slightly creepy look, I expected her to be a yokai too, but no, she's just a weird kid in a yukata. Erika sings a song with her, but unfortunately we never see Mika again. I see you do have some talent. Very well. If you manage to turn that lake into a flower bed, I'll take you as my pupil. In another fairy tale-like touch, only solving a riddle will let Erika learn the miracle voice from Kurumi Miyako. Turn the lake into a flower bed? That's just crazy talk. Later on, Misao is the one who solves the riddle. What, you thought Erika would? Misao's the brains of this operation. Please don't start singing for no reason. People will think you're a weirdo. Murasaki, the girl leading the workers, and Midori, the girl leading the bikers who attacked them, help with the manual labor needed to light up the lake, and Erika gains the power of the miracle voice. In some bad writing, though, the miracle voice doesn't seem to affect anything else in the story or gameplay. Erika gains no new abilities in the menu, for example. Murasaki, Midori, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have been able to gain the miracle voice. Thank you. If you don't mind me asking, would you like to join our team? Would I? Leave all your gunpowder needs to me! I'm in too. I can handle any bike and I'm great in a fight. Just so you know, I'm a black belt in karate. Are we putting together a pop idol band or terrorist cell? Turns out there's overlap, since Erika's next move, in Act 3, is heading with Murasaki and Midori to break into a corporate executive's office and blackmail him, lest we reveal that he's having an affair with one of his idols. And to think Kurumi told us the kooky king is the dark side of the entertainment industry. Nah, I'm pretty sure that's controlling old sex creeps. And also, companies scoping out girls who fit a certain image and putting them under tremendous pressure to behave a certain way and sing songs written for them so their fans can imagine these girls' constructed identities being their girlfriends. Ahem. So yeah, Erika's probably better off with Yachio. The executive is ugly though, so it's okay for us to treat him cruelly. Imagine kissing those lips. Act 3, You Are the Derpy Girl, is a transitional point. Erika meets Momomi, an obsessive fangirl with an encyclopedic knowledge of Japanese celebrities, who becomes the last of the 8 idols, resolving the first plot thread. Can I join you? Sure, I don't mind. If I may speak freely, that would make her the fated 8th member of our group. Are you sure about this? Gathering 8 people was the whole point, wasn't it? The faster the better, I say. Yeah, who cares? Whatever. This only affects the rest of our lives. But Act 3 is also the act wherein the kooky king finally appears in person to challenge Erika, beginning the second major plot thread. He looms in the background from early on. Act 1 ends on a cliffhanger that reveals the scheming kooky king plans to form the Super Idol group and then convert them to his cause. Who is this kooky king? What does he really want? Before long, Erika and her friends will be involved in his evil scheme. Look, this is serious, okay? When we meet the Kooky King himself in Act 3, we discover the horse head, named Kooky Gallop, is actually a codpiece. He's the kookiest creature of all. The king also has Groucho glasses and enormous nipples. Something is lost in translation here. The Kooky King's name in Japanese is Lord Iramono. I think Iramono is miscellaneous variety show content, So the Kooky King is a diabolical cornball variety show comedian who plans to end the Idol's career before it starts by turning the Erica Project into a group of more cornball variety show comedians consigned to embarrassing mediocrity. Erica, I am going to conquer the world. I will use my kooky power to change this world into a silly, happy place. The Fiend! Actually, he intends to do this by hijacking every satellite in orbit to amplify his psychic kooky alpha beam from every TV set in the world to lobotomize all of humanity, so actually it is a legitimately evil plan. Alas, he's so silly that his silly pose counteracts the power of Erica's miracle voice, and he gives his lieutenants earplugs so they can't hear her. Act 3 is mostly about challenging the Kooky King's minions who guard the studios between Erica and the legendary song, You Are the Derpy Girl. The song is a guaranteed hit, but being able to perform it is somewhat complicated by the songwriter having committed suicide before he finished the lyrics. The idea is that all the members of the Kooky Company are washed-up celebrities reduced to doing television comedy, surely a fate worse than death. The guardians of the third studio, for example, are Euroshio and the Sekitori brothers, former sumo wrestlers who are also great singers. Only the Kooky King is willing to recognize the other talents of these unphotogenic people, especially considering that Erica is also a criminal and motivated by the desire to receive an inheritance from her emotionally distant mother. This is a morally complex situation. Next, to channel the ghost of the dead songwriter, Hoshimi needs to see stars, so Erica clunks her on the head with a baseball bat. Not just invented in this scene for the player to think of a slapstick punchline to this puzzle, the detail about Hoshimi channeling her power better when under stars calls back to a scene in Act 1 when you must visit a planetarium with her. Me being impressed with the setup and payoff of a minor story element probably speaks to the low quality of so much video game writing, but it goes to show that, despite appearances, Idol Hakenden is not totally random nonsense. There's some thought behind it. More than you can say about some video games. In Act 4 and Act 5, the narrative fully shifts focus to battling the Kooky King, and the stakes rise astronomically. In Act 4, the Kooky Quartet, Yachio has bought a satellite for the Erica Project to have their own television channel, but the Kooky King hijacks the broadcast. My friends from the Erica Project, your dear Hoshimi is in our custody. If you want her back, Erica must come to the Kooky Castle on Mount Aso in the K Prefecture. Alone. They take the news pretty calmly. This is the first point in Idol Hakenden that Erica is on her own. Without her party, she must defeat the Kooky King's Shitenno, or Kooky Quartet, I guess. Sort of like the Australia dungeon in Dragon Quest III. Contrary to the setup, you only fight 3 of the quartet, though. The Kooky Quartet wear different animal costumes that the translation straight up calls furry suits. When she has nothing else left, even Erica has to use her head. This is also the first chapter, so far as I know, that can lead to a bad ending. Masashi Tajiro stabbing Erica and dragging her unconscious body to the Kooky King, who transforms her into the Kooky Queen. Idol Hakenden has several bad endings, including if you just tell the Kooky King you'll go along with his plan, but all are basically game overs with the same picture and music. Erica looks kinda sexy in her kooky form, I'm not gonna lie. Erica isn't entirely alone, though. After reaching the third Shitenno, Erica's tragic former friend Kawashi Akeni, you can choose a bunch of options at random until Momomi reappears. Momomi, what are you doing here? I was worried about you. I'm used to sneaking into Idol's dressing room, so this was a piece of cake. Again, Erika is running a criminal gang. At first, Kawashi Ikeni claims he's loyal to the Kuki King because only here can he be his true, silly self. Haven't you learned your lesson yet? Reagan is the 50th US President Punch! Should have hired me to edit the script. Yeah, his punch is actually jolting Erika with a taser. That could kill her, you know. You're wrong! Ronald Reagan is actually the 40th President of the United States. I'm good at social studies, you know. Got it? Oh my gosh! Did a little girl correct me in trivia? My pride as the most informed columnist is in crumbles. My raison d'etre is going through Gestaltzerfall. In this moment of weakness, Erika cuts off his terrible multi-pronged top knot, and Kawashi returns to being a normal columnist. The Kuki King doesn't give anyone freedom. Instead, he brainwashes them using wacky objects, like Kawashi's strange top knot. But all is not well. It doesn't matter if Erika beats the Kuki Quartet. The Kuki King knows that just by fighting them, Erika is becoming sillier and sillier. This girl with an unparalleled degree of kooky potential. It's like how in Puella Magi Madoka Magica, Madoka has the potential to be the most powerful magical girl ever, even before she becomes one. We're talking world-ending levels of kookiness and why the Kuki King wants Erika so much. The finale, Act 5, The Kuki King, opens with a series of wild plot twists. I'm truly sorry, Erika. The truth is, I am a spy. Ichiro Shinjitsu was actually the Kuki King, who has been manipulating Erika from the beginning. Everything I've done, sending Hoshimi and Kawashi to guide you through your trials, was for a single purpose, giving you the skills to help me create a Kuki paradise. Why are you so obsessed with me? Because of your incredible potential. You are a Kuki thoroughbred. After all, you are my granddaughter. Whoa! This is it, right? This is Idol Hakenden's big plot twist! I can't deliver that line. Twist! Based on Ichiro Shinjitsu, Hoshimi, and her abusive sisters and mother, Erika comes from a deeply dysfunctional family. The Kuki King already got Shizuka and Reika, who have now ruined their careers and dumped their fortunes into funding the Kuki Company. Your dear sisters asked me to turn you into a Kuki comedian, so I brainwashed them as they deserved. Like I said, the plot twists come thick and fast, not least of them being that there is a plot. Now the entire world will become a Kuki paradise! After more adventures, Erika reunites with Momomi and the rest of the Erika project, save Hoshimi, and they agree to break back into the Kuki castle to stop this insidious plot. Despite the silliness, the high stakes and building suspense result in a tense climactic fight against the Kuki King, who starts converting the idols into Kukis. Erika readies the gun. Do you have what it takes to shoot a real person, Erika? No, I can't. Erika might not be willing to shoot her grandfather, but Yachio has no qualms about it. She misses, but the effort wasn't in vain. It reveals the king's weak point. Are you trying to kill my dear Kuki Gallop? Hoshimi, who has been racked with guilt, suddenly leaps in to take a slice from the king's sword in place of her sister and best friend, Erika. Erika, I really wanted to be friends with all of you. It's only a scratch. You'll be fine. If I may speak freely, I know this is a mortal wound. My end is nigh. Little does Hoshimi realize that Erika has a jar of Toru's magical healing sweat. Long story. I may yet survive. Oh, that was fast. Hoshimi explains that to stop the Kuki King, we must aim for Kuki Gallop. And I could have told you that. The crotch is always a weak point. So Erika tears off the codpiece, instantly defeating the Kuki King, and the happy music starts back up. A long time ago, I was a popular entertainer. Just like you, I had to fight against the Kuki Company. I was able to defeat them, but the moment I touched the Kuki Gallop, I fell under its influence. I became the new Kuki King. So basically, Kuki Gallop was the true king. The Kuki King was controlled by wacky objects, just like the Kuki Quartet. This metaphor teaches us that it is not the individual, but the institutional relationships that must be eliminated, lest we become that which we most hate. Then Yachio reveals that she and Misao have hijacked the Kuki King satellite hijacking system. Hijacking the hijacker. We can use the devices here to control the communications network of the entire planet. What happened to Misao's accent? In other words, we can force the whole planet to watch your show. Pretty cool, huh? And so, instead of the Kuki Company, it's the Erica Project that becomes an international criminal conspiracy to hijack the world's satellites. This is why the opening song has the outer space theme. But everybody forgives them, so I guess the law can let it slide this time. Maybe that's the power of the miracle voice. The version of the song you're hearing now is from an Idol Hakenden album that came out in 2011, more than 20 years later. For comparison, Mother's lyric soundtrack came out the same year as the video game. Wonder what story lies behind Idol Hakenden Hoe Hoe tracks. Hoe Hoe being the word that this translation renders as derpy. The lyrics are credited to Hoe Hoe X, which apparently means Tanaka Satowa, Mikami Haruka, and Mori Chiaki, all anime voice actors. While Idol Hakenden, with its bog-standard obtuse progression, repetition, and complete lack of freedom, is kinda terrible, it's difficult not to adore the colorful strangeness and personality that explode from every moment. Compared to Princess Tomato, Idol Hakenden, though shorter, has a strong narrative, with actual character arcs, stakes, a plotline, and all that story stuff. I was concerned about what would happen. Can't say that for Princess Tomato. But Princess Tomato, a 1984 computer game, was retro by 1989. Back then, video games evolved rapidly. In comparison to what was happening overseas, Japanese adventure game developers innovated little in gameplay, instead putting their attention toward crafting stronger, more complex narratives. Say what you want about Snatcher, but it definitely tells a more sophisticated story than King's Quest IV. And so does Idol Hakenden. Though the story should have focused more on the girls and less on the Kuki King. After she attacks the fireworks team, we never see Midori fight, for example. She herself lampshades it. I've been around since Act 2 and I haven't seen a single punch. Why else is Midori here? Let's see each idol use her abilities. I thought this was a story about Erica becoming an idol to overcome her sisters, too. Instead, Shizuka and Reika are barely present and the story is all about stopping the evil schemes of a joke character. Why have that set up then? The sisters do ask the Kuki King to ruin Erica. However, they should have been more active in the story, had a single scene with Erica, say, so that the Kuki King upstaging them as the bad guy could be a meaningful twist. As it is, the player already knows the Kuki King is after Erica beforehand. The scene with him and Shizuka and Reika feels less like an escalation and more like the writer remembering, oh yeah, the sisters are supposed to be the antagonists. The Kuki King might fail to hijack the world's communication network, but he does hijack Idol Hakenden. I want to see the idols interact as a team. Except for Hoshimi and Erica near the end, they never really feel like friends. Though it is nice to have the whole gang cheering Erica on during the credits. Fan club. Did you forget you're part of this pop idol group? Misao suggests she'll program a video game about Erica, adding a final twist like in The Outsiders, or How the Steel Was Tempered. But if Idol Hakenden is Misao's video game, then it can't be a literal retelling. She isn't there for most of the story to witness what happened, right? Also, what happened to the fanatic Miyuki Yamori? She's so cute! I love her. The other three members of the Kuki Quartet get hilariously rapid character arcs, but Miyuki vanishes with the Kuki King. I guess Natsume ran out of cartridge space. Something else I have to hand to Idol Hakenden is the diversity of the 8 idols. Like, sure, they're all young Japanese women, but think about it. Erika has a round face and is a bit on the pudgy side. Misao is borderline butch, if in a business casual way. Yachio is physically huge and has a cleft chin. Midori is muscular. And Momomi, well, kinda looks like a little boy. You might think, so what? But video games often lack diversity in body type among female characters. Or any characters for that matter, but especially girls. Take another, slightly different Japanese adventure game, The 25th Ward: The Silver Case. The 25th Ward has dozens and dozens of characters. Among the men, there are young guys, old guys, tough guys, fat guys, pretty guys, pimply guys, bald guys, all kinds of guys. Most of them loathsome, but a lot of body types, I mean. Among the women, every single one is young, thin, conventionally attractive. Well, maybe I shouldn't say attractive since Takahashi and Yuki are teenagers, but you know what I mean. Idol Hakenden, in contrast, features all sorts of women. Outside of the main cast, we have older women like Miho, for example, and Kurumi Miyako. So in a way, Idol Hakenden is ahead of its time. Oh my god, Hoshimi, don't body shame like that. Hating fat people, one irrational hatred that remains as mainstream as hating trans people is in Britain. The battle against Toru is also a huge fat joke. He only becomes human again after he sweats off his weight. Perhaps Idol Hakenden isn't that far ahead of its time after all. There have been a number of Idol Hakenden fan meetups, such as the Tower Records Hiroshima Collab Idol Hakenden Original Art Exhibition held in 2016. I say meetup because convention suggests too many people, I think. It's unclear to me if Kondo Yutaka himself was there, or if, instead, his artwork and a written interview were sold. Actually, either way, they were definitely selling his artwork. In 2014, somebody named Shudo Joe wrote a light novel sequel entitled Idol Hakenden, Minami no Shima no Taiyu Tohoshi. The subtitle means something like Sun and Stars of the Southern Island. So it seems Idol Hakenden retains a following in Japan. Natsume Atari still holds the rights, so if someone there wanted, Idol Hakenden could be made into an anime or a whole series of novels. As you might have guessed, I haven't read this book. Judging from the cover though, Erika is blonde like on the box art, and also a lot skinnier. In the original, I'd not have guessed she had visible abs. The illustrations by Arimo are all in this dollar-sanitized contemporary style, instead of the cartoony 80s look of Kondo-san's originals. Still, it is nice to see what the Famicom game's graphics never permitted, all 8 idols actually hanging out. The plot involves the Erika project winning a trip to a tropical resort. Since Idol Hakenden has a strong narrative, I think it would translate pretty well to the new medium. Definitely more opportunities for the girls to establish rapport, but that raises the question of why Idol Hakenden was released as a video game to begin with. Speaking of things that make you wonder why they exist, did you like this video? Yes? No? Like and comment and subscribe and click the bell to be notified when I upload, blah blah blah. Engagement helps me. You can follow me on Twitter. If you want to contact me, by the way, it's better to do it by Twitter or email. I might not look at the YouTube comments. Next time on Famicom Adventures, Godslayer.